Hi, I'm Connor Mahoney. Welcome back to the Fresh Start Project, with a mission to expose the stories of formerly incarcerated individuals in order to reduce the stigma around reentry. Today we have Pastor Michael Laidlaw, founder of Overcomers International Fellowship, otherwise known as the Dream Center in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Founded 27 years ago, the center has helped formerly incarcerated individuals and homeless people. Pastor Michael, welcome. Tell us your story.
Wonderful. I deeply appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. My adventure started a long time ago, over 30 years ago, involved with. I started out as a dairy farmer in west central Minnesota. Went and was doing very well at that. Had taken over the family farm. We were running about 1,000 acres of land and about 60 dairy cattle. And I'd taken it over, and in the mid-'80s, there was a farm crisis that happened. So one year, my land was worth $1,400 an acre. I was over-leveraged. The next year, it was worth $700 an acre. I was insolvent, had to leave. I was married, 2 children, and it just absolutely devastated our family. We ended up separated, divorced. I tried to get into other careers, trying to achieve, feeling like an absolute failure, which I had nothing to do with the economy or my management practices. It was just the economy, but I didn't understand that. So ended up really getting involved with alcohol, which really led to, then got involved with cocaine, and ended up, here I'm this amoral guy that, would never do or hurt anybody or do anything wrong. And here I'm out of control with my addiction, with my drinking, and getting involved with cocaine and some real shady business deals that I'd gotten involved with and everything else, and ended up just crashing and burning, entering into my first treatment center. I was down to about 170 pounds, and I was so out of it that I was there for supposedly 28 days, and I really don't remember the first 21. I came out of that with the conclusion that I couldn't use cocaine. But with no skills to how to stay sober or clean, went right back out and began drinking. Maintained that for about another year, and I knew that I had committed some crimes. I knew that I would eventually be arrested, and things were going to. I didn't know where that was all going to end up. But so one of my thoughts was, because I'd become unemployed again, and was to go back to treatment because I didn't want to go to prison addicted. I don't know. That was just some kind of. Because I was resolved that that's where I was going to go and that's what I deserved. So I went back into a treatment center. And that time I learned something and I gained some tools. I had no place to go. I was basically homeless. I had a car and they told me to go to 90 meetings in 90 days of 12-step groups, Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's what I did. I came back to St. Cloud, and I immediately applied at some temporary temp agencies, and within 4 or 5 days of all of God's intervention in my life, I got to go to St. Ben's Convent, of all places on planet Earth, as a temp worker, and ended up staying there for the next 8 years. But what a place of solace and peaceful, no competition, and what a great place to be. And I continued with my sobriety there for, I went to AA meetings every, 4 or 5 times a week, and continued on with that. In about 18 months, I was working and doing well, and the administration, the sisters were just great. Had an awesome time there, a bunch of great coworkers. And then there was, they told me to come into the office, and here there was somebody from the Attorney General's office, some local detectives, and said, okay, Mr. Laidlaw, we have we have enough evidence. Everybody likes to have a book written about you. They said, well, we have 495 pages of documented evidence and we have enough evidence probably for 9 felonies, which would be a life sentence. And I was kind of relieved to a certain extent because I knew in the back of my mind something was going to happen. I didn't know exactly what it was. But I had to trust God. I had to believe that this was somehow it was going to all work out. I didn't know how, didn't have any idea. I'd never been in the criminal justice system. I didn't know how it worked. They said, go get an attorney because we will be charging you in a few days, which they did. They charged me with 4 felonies and arrested me. And I remember I got arrested in the garden of the nuns or the convent there. And I remember my supervisor, wonderful sister, came running out there and got in the deputy's face and said, you can't take him off of this campus until you talk to his supervisor. They were just wonderful, good, great people, just awesome. And anyway, I bailed out and found an attorney and showed up on the day of court. And I bowed my knee by my bed that day, that like I did every day, that 18 months of sobriety, that Lord, I want to be used by you. I'll use me in prison, use me out of prison. It doesn't matter to me. And because I'm yours, I'm totally sold out. I have nothing left for that I want to, do anything else or do anything different than to do your will. So I went to court. I was confused. I couldn't find my lawyer. I didn't know how it all worked. And here my attorney shows up and they said, well, they're trying to give you a plea deal. I didn't have anything to plea with. Anybody that I was involved with cocaine with had either was in jail or gone, and I was kind of a blue collar, white collar user, so I really didn't have nothing to bargain with. So anyway, it all came down to I pled guilty to 2 felonies, had to pay back $30,000 in restitution that I'd taken and used of other people's money, and they wanted to put me away for a year. And my attorney said, look, he's been sober, he's been working, he's been in the community for 18 months. Let him start paying back his restitution and let him do Huber. Huber, it means you're on a work release program. You stay at the Stearns County Jail and you go to work and right back at the convent. So what a relief that was. I thought it was finally over. All of the terrors and the horrors and the fear. And it was such a relief to have that happen to me. So I knew that I did that. I did my jail time there and was eventually released. And I had a place, and I began to do 12-step Christian programming. The 12 steps are a wonderful spiritual program on their own. And one of the things that I found in my search on how to stay sober, at the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, there was a lot of people there that seemed to be searching for God. I knew who God was. I'd had some education. I had enough credits to become ordained and all of that, which thank God I didn't, because I would have been defrocked at that time with my felony convictions. But they had a simple program of accountability with the 12 steps and sponsorship and different things like that really worked. And I needed what they had, and they needed what I had. So I started support groups in my house, and it grew up to, and I did this for about 5 years while I was working, and paying back my restitution, all of that type of stuff, and on probation. I was on probation for 10 years, and with a payment program every month, and did all of that type of stuff, and it was a good thing. And so after 5 years and doing a lot of work in the community and everything else, and we had an opportunity to the pastor that I was involved with, the church that I was involved with, I'd probably brought about 100 people to that church. And because I'd go to the shelters, I'd go to the streets, I'd pick up people from the VA and everything else and bring them out to church. And so he helped us develop or qualify for our 501(c), and we began Overcomers International Fellowship. And we started with a drop-in center for the homeless. All it is a day shelter. So we had some day-old pastries, some water, some coffee, a place of refuge because if you're homeless or if you're staying in a shelter or something, you can't stay there overnight. You have to go out in the community looking for work, try to use a telephone. And we're talking, this is, close to 30 years ago. So there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't all of these other, things that we take for granted now. So we rented a basement of a church, and I was still working, and we had volunteers running that. And we did that for a couple of years. Then we bounced around. We went to a few storefronts where we first found out that not everybody thinks you're doing a great job serving the homeless. We come under a lot of persecution. We'd rented a storefront, and we had a whole bunch of businesses sign a petition saying that, we were destroying the neighborhood and, all of that type of stuff. And because we had 60 to 80 homeless people a day in there. And eventually I had to go back to my house and continue the work out of my house because we just got driven out of the storefronts and everything else. So then in 98, that was in 95 when we were in corporate. 98, we had the opportunity. A friend of mine in the ministry came to me and said, well, there's the old Great Northern Hotel just down the street. It's for sale. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. We trudged through the snow in a vacant old hotel, 2-story hotel, and we just laid hands on it and prayed and believed God that this is where we were supposed to be. And a whole series of miracles. We were able to purchase it on a contract for deed, and a couple of months later move in. So we really thought we had it made now, because not only could we do day shelter, but we could actually house people there and provide services. At that time, in 98, there was about 1/3 of the homeless population. There was probably about 400 homeless people in our community at that time.
Mm-hmm. And you say it's tripled now?
Yes. And there was about 1/3 of them were homeless veterans, because the VA hadn't really responded. No one wanted to provide the services. Even at that time, PTSD wasn't even really therapeutically diagnosed. It was still a theory, horrible stuff. Anyway, so we had a lot of work to be done. There was a lot of homeless and everything else. So that's where we began, housing people and working with them, and eventually it just grew. We went from there. We were there for about 18 months, and again we started serving a meal for the Salvation Army. Always had done a noon meal, but no one in our community was doing an evening meal. So we thought, well, we have a facility there. We got the cafe, we got a kitchen. Let's try to do an evening meal for the community. And so we had no money. We had nothing. We called it wiener soup is what we were going to do. So we had Roman noodles and hot dogs. That was all we had. But it generated some support, and people poured out, and we were eventually able to provide some nice meals and everything else. But we were generating in that neighborhood about 40 to 60 people a day coming into that neighborhood, and the neighborhood just about went apey on us. Here we're doing a meal, and we get a call one of the evenings that there's a meeting down the street. They're trying to close you down, and I go, well, we just passed all of our permits. We've got all of our things, our licensing, everything's in place. Said, I don't know what this is about. So we walked down there, and I walked into a room of about 300 screaming people. We had the mayor at the time, some of the city council, the police department, the fire department, the zoning people. They were all there, and we destroyed their neighborhood. We lowered their values. It was what we call NIMBY, not in my backyard. We love what you do, but not in my backyard and not in my city. And that was kind of the mentality of the city at the time. So that began a 3-year battle of, we had the police would come in and search, check IDs, unprovoked. intimidate people. They sent in the inspectors, and one time they sent in the inspectors just to try and find something wrong. And the next day in the St. Cloud Times, it says shelter has 30 days to clean up their act, and all it was 2 exit bulbs that were out. Just screw in 2 exit bulbs. That was it. It was a 3-year battle, but we overcame that. We just continued to. I couldn't focus in on the hate or the persecution or become a victim of that victim mentality, because that'll make you sick or full of self-pity. It was the next sick person that would be walking through, the person in need, how could I help them and how could I provide services? That's what I had to focus in on. And so that's how it all began. And from there, we were able to acquire the buildings next to us, and continued to grow grow the ministry.
And you have 2 campuses now.
No, we just have one.
From what I read, you have one in Wilmer. Is that
well?
correct?
We had our facility in Wilmer too. We were invited to Wilmer, and we had a facility there for 17 years. We had 3 properties. We pioneered that whole project. There hadn't been a project like that or a housing project like that, and we went in there and established a licensed board and lodge in three buildings and housed 17 people for those 17 years. But we eventually sold that to another provider that is doing the same work that we did too. So we wanted to concentrate all of our efforts into St. Cloud. So now we had 4 buildings after that happened, and then we just developed a 5th property. So we have a total of 46 residents there in St. Cloud, and so we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Staff. We do case management. We do all sorts of programming and mandated stuff. We had originally started out just doing raw homeless stuff. Then with both men and women. Then we went to men only, and then we finally went to just working with ex-offenders and people coming out of prisons and jails. So that's exclusively what we work with. The guys that we work with cannot stay at a regular normal shelter because of their crimes against somebody else. Might have been violence, domestic abuse, might have been whatever, some crimes against humanity or an individual. So that's the population that we work with. We work with all of the law enforcement, with all of the probation officers. We work with all of the different vendors. In Minnesota, can we do Corrections 101 here a little bit? Good time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So in the state of Minnesota, we're progressive as far as reentry, which is wonderful for people to get well, to get better, to stop the crime rates and all of the other things. We have in the United States, there's 5.5 million people under some form of supervision or incarceration. In Minnesota, we have 1 in 4 people have got some kind of criminal record. In Minnesota, we have 1 in 28 people that are on some form of supervision. So there's a lot of people will come out, and in Minnesota, you have to do a third of your time out in the community. So if you got a 5-year sentence for whatever that is, you're going to do that 3 years and then 2 years out in the community for rehabilitation. Because just because you're locked up, it doesn't change what's in your heart or in your head. You need to have renewing of the mind. You need to receive the mental health treatment, the cognitive behavioral treatment, chemical dependency treatment, just learning how to be sober, clean, get out of that criminal thinking and everything else. So, that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a 28-day program or a 30-day program. It takes discipline. It takes long-term. And that's the way corrections is set up, so that they're under constant supervision. They're under, you got to stay sober. It's got to stay clean. It's got to stay crime-free, and go to your programming, go to your mandated programming, and you're going to see a transformation happen in their lives. Not everybody gets it. Not everybody's ready for it, but it does come together for them. So, Minnesota currently, I think we have, the populations have went down since COVID because we aren't doing so much violations and stuff, but we're down to about 8,000 people in the Department of Corrections jurisdictions in the prisons. Then we have several thousand in all of the 88 county jails.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty small population. Minnesota and Wisconsin are pretty similar as far as the economy and everything else, but they have Wisconsin has a total different look at corrections. They have over 20,000 people in corrections, but there they have private prisons. So it's productive. If you put somebody in prison, there's a profit to be made. Minnesota, we don't do that. We've kind of eliminated any kind of that.
Mm-hmm. The
Getting wealthy
prisons.
off of that. That's pathetic, in my opinion. But it back to us. We're a faith-based program, but we don't demand any kind of affiliation with faith. We try to keep the spiritual atmosphere up there, where people it's a draw of experiencing God's love and acceptance and what He wants to do in their lives, and not shoved down their throat or demanded them to, there's some Christian programs where, you got to sign a 30-page document and, you got to come to Jesus or else.
Yeah.
We don't do that. And I think that's counterproductive, but it really works. And so we have some very great success stories and some good people. We have, I think currently we have 6 people going to college or the VOTEC right now, and once somebody gets that desire to go to school, it breaks off all of the chains of poverty, that poverty thinking, that limitation that, well, I'm a felon, I can't do anything, you go to college, get an education, or go to a skills program, and your whole life will change.
Well, you really do have a fantastic story, and you clearly have found your vocation. How have your experiences molded how you help others at the Dream Center?
It's been a maturing. I was deeply evangelical, probably more so, working around the sisters and all of the other things. I learned a great lesson being involved with the Benedictines. When I was working there 18 months, caught 2 felony charges. They could have said, we don't hire felons. We don't want nothing to do with you. You've got a criminal past, whatever. You're done. Mm-hmm. I really don't know how that would have turned out. My whole life would have turned out if that's what the Benedictines would have done. They didn't. They gave me a second chance. And that's extraordinary. In fact, that has developed into, we work with service learning students from St. Ben's, St. John's. We work with the campus ministry. They come alongside us, and they're just great. And so it's something that, what we've done and what has been accomplished isn't in a book, or it isn't in a manual. It isn't in a college course. It's something that developed over time. And we always gleaned as much information from other programs, halfway houses, different things like that, and how we should do this. So in our staff meetings, I have this big water pitcher, and I have this thing that's written around the side of it that how can we best serve those that we serve, and how can we best serve thee? And so always challenging our thinking that how can we do a better job? What do we need to glean here? Mm-hmm. Somebody's struggling, do we send them, do we violate them or send them homeless, or we send them back into maybe violation back into prison and jail? Or let's see what we can do to tweak that aftercare program of theirs to see a success come forth. And that's the way it seems to work.
Mm-hmm. What can you teach us and the viewers about second chances and even resent? I feel like a lot of people nowadays lead and they think with resent. It seems that you and those at the Dream Center have a much more progressive and correct thinking.
Well, it's a matter of, if we want to look at public safety, I have 46 guys that are all on felony probation. Now, and they're coming back into our community, they can't be locked up for the rest of their lives. Of those that go get a prison sentence, there's less than 1% that are lifers. The rest of the 99 are coming back. into our communities. And wherever you get sentenced, if you get sentenced in Stearns County, Benton County, whatever, that's the county you have to return to for your supervised probation. So we have 46 residents. Now, I want to ask the community a question. Do you want them to live in 46 different unsupervised locations, or do you want to have them in one location where there's accountability, we've got cameras, we've got curfews, we've got drug testing, we've got all of that stuff. So on a public safety thing, to give people a second chance and support reentry projects like us or like other halfway houses or anything else, they work for that specific reason, public safety. You don't, all of those guys are accountable. And I think there's a lot of people that do care, but they don't understand. And I'm so glad that we're doing the podcast there to bring out, to get rid of some of the stigma, to explain and understand that people need opportunities. People that have been, so many of the men that I've worked with have lived in poverty, have been abused, have been neglected, have been molested, have been, all they ever known is poverty. All they ever known was survival. They didn't have a father. They didn't have a childhood that was just, it was a tragedy. And what do they know? But they just continue to repeat those same things. So if we can get a hold of them and get them in the right programs and get them and challenge their thinking and treat them with respect and honor. One of the things that we're famous for is radical hospitality. Mm-hmm. If you have a guest come to your house or to your restaurant or your business or whatever else, your guest is supposed to leave better than they came. Radical hospitality is pouring out everything you can into them to see a transformation happen in their life, to give them hope, to give them a future. Because that future, and we're called the Dream Center. They all had a dream at 8 or 9 years old. They wanted to be a policeman. They wanted to be a bus driver. They wanted to be a truck driver, whatever. Now they're 40 years old, 2-time convicted felon. They might have hepatitis C from intravenous drug use, whatever. We need to teach them how to dream again. And we got to give people the opportunity to dream again so that they can move forward in their lives.
Can you elaborate on radical hospitality? What is an example of somebody who acts with radical hospitality versus someone who doesn't?
Well, you can give somebody, it go back to the Bible where the prodigal son went out and just wasted all of his father's inheritance and all the other things. But when he came to himself, the Bible says, and he came back and his father put a ring on him, put a robe on him, and threw a big feast. Now that's radical hospitality. That's treating people with love and acceptance, not with, you are a criminal, you did this, committed this horrible act when you were off your meds and on meth and whatever else and blah, blah, blah. No, or here's an opportunity for you to absolutely, and it's a learning process for that because they go, I don't know about this.
It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah, I don't know about this. Why am I being treated this well and that good? Because they went through the criminal justice system where they're interrogated. They had to confess to some things. Sometimes they didn't even do it, and sometimes they didn't get caught at what they should have got caught. I'm not going to blame the criminal justice system, but the treatment they got up to that point, or they've been repeated into that, that's kind of a ingrained thing that they've got a pretty big chip on their shoulder and a bitterness towards authority, a bitterness towards the system itself. And the system is not perfect. The system is still full of injustices and different things like that. So let's get the field level, provide the services, provide the care, treat them with love and respect, and pour out everything you possibly can into them. Put the ring on, put the robe on, throw a feast. And you're going to see eventually them accept that and grow through it.
Can you relate that to how the Benedictine sisters treated you and their hospitality?
Absolutely. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. That's exactly what they did. When here I pled out to this case, felony, had to pay back restitution, and that was in September. So and I'm there for 6 months, and I'm driving back and forth, coming to work every day. And then, and so my supervisor, my sister, I'll just mention her name, Paula, God bless her. She would say, if it snows just one flake, because I was on the grounds crew, I'm going to get you out of that jail and you can come out here. And, I didn't deserve that. Also, then, they throw on a big Christmas party for all their employees. And she said, I know the sheriff. I got a little pull up there. I'm going to get a hold of the sheriff and I'm going to get you out of jail to come to the Christmas party. I go, no, Sister Paula, I love you. I care. You're pouring that radical stuff onto me. You're showing me this love and acceptance. And please, I don't want to rock the boat on no sides. Just let me do my time. And I'm coming to work and I'm smiling and happy that I'm not locked up for the rest of my life. And that was just one kindness. And a lot of the other stuff too. And that was just poured out to me through that. And, the peace, the serenity, it was exactly what I need, because with my drug use, I had created a whole bunch of brain damage. I had created a lifestyle of surviving in a drug culture and alcoholism fog in my life of just selfishness and self-centeredness, and just being around that peace, that tranquility, and then the peace of it was really ministered to me. It really did.
Mm-hmm. You also are incredibly involved. You've been on the mayor's task force for the homeless, mm-hmm. the city of St. Cloud, and member of the immediate needs of the homeless committee, former housing committee, and a chairperson for the NAACP. Specifically with being on boards that are involved with homeless people, do you believe that there is a problem in the United States with homeless people, or in bigger cities?
Well, even in St. Cloud, we have such a terrible problem. We've tripled the homeless population. From day one when we first started, we developed these committees and programs, and we got the different agencies in the city and the county to apply for federal funds, state funds, and to address homelessness and to build facilities and different things like that. But we outgrew that, and there was a real political theme there. We had a lot of progressive people that were really on board with us for that 10 or 12 years or 15 years, and then it became the city council changed, a lot of the policies and procedures changed, the HRA board changed. That it was more for we're going to go after more commercial development. We're going to go into more business development and less balance of housing being built as far as low-income housing. We haven't had a low-income housing project built. Well, we just finished one here a couple months ago, but that was the first one in like 5-10 years. Mm-hmm. And so we had a balance of, if we're developing, or the growth of this city needs to have growth of low-income housing and other services. And that's a nationwide thing that has happened. So, the homeless population was always used to be around 400,000 or 500,000. Now it's, it's over 1 million, and growing. And now all of the encampments, we've had encampments in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and they're trying to address that. And mm-hmm. We have one in St. Cloud. We have an encampment there. We have one of the shelters that they closed down because they weren't in compliance or whatever. Some of that was NIMBY, some of that was management, whatever. I don't need to judge that, but we're into November right now, and the mayor is saying that we're going to have another task force to look into these things. We got another provider comes from Minneapolis that is going to try to do another low barrier shelter. Low barrier means somebody can come into your shelter high or off their medication and very unruly, and what a mess,
Well, is that radical hospitality, or is that being unorganized?
You got to be organized to work with that population. Mm-hmm. You really do. You got to have a structure. One of the things that our current governor and God bless the surplus of the last few years. We have $100 million. We have more money available to tap in, and now the grants are going out there. There's $100 million specifically for shelters and homeless services. So we have in our region right now, there's 4 different agencies that are applying for that money. And some of that is to break brand new ground to build new facilities. So it's coming together. Minnesota is progressive. We care, we see a problem. We don't try to, and it might take us a few years to get it together, whatever else, but we try to get the funding, get the services going to address the problems there. And it's not an easy fix. It isn't, and you can put Band-Aids on it, or you can create actual low-income housing that is going to solve that thing. They got the tiny house thing that we've never been able to achieve in our region here. It's always been voted down by, the city council.
When you say tiny house, what do you mean?
Tiny houses is
like tiny houses.
A tiny house, 400 square feet, 500 square feet. The VA, one of the other, all over the nation, they build these things, and they set them up in a supervised situation, and they can, and it works for people with mental illness, and they're checked on, with their medication and sobriety and all the other things. It works. It's one of the solutions, not the only solution. With homelessness, I got to share this. We had a horrible tragedy of about 300,000 homeless veterans at any given time, even up to 6-7 years ago. It doesn't exist anymore. It ended. With the homeless populations we got going out, we can solve this, but you got to pour out the resources and the funding and the services. Back in the day, there was one outreach worker out of the VA hospital here for the entire state of Minnesota. Now, just for our region in St. Cloud, we have 6 outreach social workers. They've built all sorts of low-income housing for them, all sorts of intervention, all sorts of treatment options, and you can't find a homeless veteran hardly ever. In fact, there's so many different organizations that started up that they'll actually almost fight over this homeless vet because there's 3 different providers trying to help him. That's what needs to get happening in the homeless populations. And it also, the same thing with Second Chance, the same thing with reentry. If you continue to develop the services, you're going to lower the crime rate. You're going to have safer communities. You're going to have people that are going to be functional instead of being a drain on society. They are functioning, paying taxes, celebrating their family, celebrating their lives, this was my past, not my future. I'm going forward. I'm going to be productive. I'm going to be successful. One of the things that we address in our people is that you're the responsible party. You're the responsible party for your wellness, for your recovery, for your sobriety, for your giving back to the community, to get back with your family. You're the responsible party in this. There's all sorts of resources and wonderful things out there, but you're still the responsible party to do the work, to do the treatments, to make the choices and decisions to be successful out in the community.
And again, the services that can help solve the homeless problem are low-income housing.
Low-income housing. We need intervention services, detox crisis, mental health crisis, low barrier shelters. It seemed to be the thing that's coming to St. Cloud. We've got a couple of them that are coming together.
Sorry, may I? It seems that it relates to healthcare a lot. And I
Absolutely.
know that you have said that access to healthcare is the key to reducing recidivism and homeless rates.
Yes, absolutely. One of the, I've been involved with this over 30 years, officially 28 years in ministry. The greatest thing that ever happened in our industry was the Affordable Care Act, where our guys can, when they come out of prisons and jails, they have insurance. We can get them in, they come out with meds, all of that type of stuff. Somebody's homeless right now, there's a way to get them on their meds, but we need to stabilize them in some form of housing. And it has to be safe, sober, clean housing somewhere. So we need to develop the crisis beds more. I don't know how many we've gotten, but we need to double or triple that, because we got to take somebody. Homelessness breaks down into 30, 30, and 30. 30% are bad choices, bad situations, employment, might be sickness, might be just poor relationships, whatever. The other third of the homeless population are serious and persistently mentally ill. And part of their illness is they don't even understand, everybody else is wrong except them.
Yeah.
And they can't understand why everybody's looking at them funny or whatever. And the other third of that homeless population are chronic inebriates, the ones that are really drug addicts, alcoholics, that have been in treatment and don't want treatment at this time and can't seem to have the hope of grasping that they can recover. And so that's where the population is. Their fathers, their sons, their dads, their children, their whatever, they're all out there. They all need services. And so we need to expand those services, and make it work for them. And then we can get a grasp on it.
Would the quality of the healthcare be reduced if the accessibility is greater, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. With the Affordable Care Act, we've increased the access completely. Let's say, in the drug and alcohol treatment industry, has tripled the amount of treatment beds that are available from 10 years ago, because of the Affordable Care Act, because there was such a need. That has not happened in the mental health field, because there's so many more obstacles, and chemical dependency is a field that you got to be licensed, you got to provide a lot of services there. But the mental health field is, you got to have psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, much more complicated. That has not happened. And so we're making progress, and but that's the mental health crisis is the big one right now. Mm-hmm. That anybody can get the services now, but it might take you 2 or 3 months to get to see a psychiatrist. That's too late.
Yes.
It might be too late. On the chemical dependency side, they're pretty good, but on the mental health side, they're not.
And it's an emerging field per se. You look back 10 years ago, and people weren't as concerned with mental health.
Right.
In prisons, in your opinion, do you think they can do better with dealing with mental health?
They have. They've come a long way. Right now, the prison system in the United States and Minnesota used to be, they would teach you a skill. You can go to the carpentry class, or you can go to the block lane, or whatever trade you can. We basically eliminated almost all of those, and we developed chemical dependency treatment programs. We developed cognitive behavioral treatment programs in prison, anger management, domestic abuse, all sorts of things, like all the different treatment programs, sex offender treatment, all that stuff is available in prison now, and it wasn't a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So they went out of we're going to teach you a new trade, but nothing changed in the heart or the head. So somebody would come out, maybe they could get a better job, but still they didn't have the skills to keep the job, or go right back out and use, or abuse, or whatever else, and end up continually cycling through the system. The only way that changes, if you change the heart or the change the head, with education, with cognitive behavioral therapy, with treatment, and giving them a hope, giving them a future, giving them a desire that this doesn't have to be the way you have to live for the rest of your life. There's a future and a hope. Mm-hmm. And I think the whole Christian message should be that there's a future and hope in everyone. So,
relating back to radical hospitality and homelessness, if you pass somebody who's homeless on the street and they're asking for money, should you give them $1?
I think that's up to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's up to the individual. A lot, back a few years ago, I knew everyone that was in the street, and it would be panhandling. And it takes a great deal of courage to get to that point, to do that. You know, I think if you feel that you're supposed to do that or stop and give them some money, do it. In other case, are they going to use it properly? They're going to go get a bottle. They're going to go, somebody might do a hustle and put together $40, $50, get a hotel room and get a case of beer, whatever else. I don't know, or some dope or whatever else. That's what happens in some cases. In other cases, it goes legitimately to. A lot of times you can say, well, here I'm going to give you a McDonald's certificate or a Subway or something, and sometimes they won't even take that. They just want the money. So then you kind of know where they're at. Back to the third and the third, mentally ill or chemically dependent, and where they're at with that. So I think it's an individual thing, and whatever touches your heart, whatever, and you don't need to judge it. You just need to do whatever is in your heart to help somebody, I guess.
And you've also been you've been a chairperson for the NAACP. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that there is racial disparity in prisons today?
Yes, there is. There still is. They've come 1,000 miles, I believe, in really identifying the gangs, the pecking orders, but it still exists. And anytime you concentrate people, they're going to go to like-minded people. They're going to feel that if I stay with that group of people, I'm going to be safe. And it's just the kind of the herd mentality and that's pretty difficult to disassemble that because it's so ingrained. But it's part of our psyche. But they've come a long way. They do on purpose. They will glean if people have been involved with gang activity, so they won't be trying to place them in a facility where there's a big population of that particular gang, and all of those, they're all discouraged to eliminate that. But there still is humanity is us against them. Mm-hmm. Turn on the 5 o'clock news, and it's us against them, and that's just an ingrained, horrible, evil thing that we have to put up with every single day.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that dynamic, the us versus them dynamic, will change ever?
No, not. There will always be people that want to control, that want to manipulate, and the first thing that they can do is create an enemy, create somebody to hate, create somebody to discriminate against, so you can feel better, and then it's us against them. And you're going to have that portion of population that's always trying to be in control. And and with politics, so many times it comes down to not voting for somebody; it's you're voting against somebody because you've been programmed that was some evil monster that is blah 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 blah, and it's horrible. And it's all that us against them. Mm-hmm. I don't see it changing. I really don't.
No, I don't either.
Unfortunately, I wish it would. Wish we could just take a magic wand and.
But again, it's a complex issue.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is.
You've had over 12,000 residents in your tenure. That's about 450 residents a year. Does that number mean anything to you?
In the early years, in the first 11 years, we went through a lot of people. A lot of times they were only there 30 days, 45 days. Now, in the latter years, with being a licensed board and lodge, we probably only have between 120 and 160 people a year that come through. So it's you can spend a lot more time pouring yourself into that population or creating the resources for them.
And forming deeper connections.
Yes. And so they aren't just spinning through there. And that's just the way the system was at that time. Mm-hmm. So it is much better. I'd rather have somebody and you just slowly just go through the system and try to make the changes that you need to and have the aha moments about, I really don't need to live in this behavior or that type of thinking. I can be free to think and to plan and to go forward in my future. I don't have to live in the past or do the same things I did in the past to survive. I'm not in survival mode. I'm in my future mode of moving forward into a better life.
So, in a general sense, is a higher turnover rate or a lower turnover rate better for residents?
A lower turnover, but it's all the individual. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to do that. We at the Dream Center, we have some long-term residents that they know the culture we have. They know the recovery community that we've built there. So we have an expectation of that conduct and that behavior that, no, you don't put your fists to the wall. No, you don't break that window. No, you don't do that. And then everybody has a chore. Everybody has a responsibility. You live as a community, not communal, but you live as a community. You have a responsibility in that community. So like all of our guys have for kitchen duties, it's rooms 1 through 4 responsible in the kitchen on Mondays. Tuesdays, it's 5 through 10, whatever. It goes right on through the campus. They have to do laundry, scrub toilets, do dishes, whatever else. And so you build that community and that recovery community, that radical hospitality community that really care for one another. So you got to get along with each other to a certain extent, or put up with each other. You build social skills. You build tolerance to one another. Might come from completely backgrounds, from ages from 19 and the next guy is 60, but you're still getting along and going through that thing. And that really builds a community strong, that we have that core group of people that are there long-term, maybe over 2 years, that know the routine. And the young ones coming in there, the new ones are assimilating into that. So, that really builds the community. With any type of long-term care like this, you have to build a community. And I want to always look at it as long-term, because every day that we have somebody in programming is one less, it's one day away from their old playmates and their old playgrounds. And the success rate is going to go up because their mentality is challenged. They're developing a whole new life skills that they can rely on instead of going back into survival mode. So it really works.
Out of the 12,000 residents that you've welcomed over the past 27 years, which ones have made a significant impression on you?
Well, there's been so many.
Could you say every single one?
Not every single one, but we've had some real beloved people that have come through, and we've seen such radical changes in their lives. That I had one of the guys that he had committed some horrible crimes. His family had abandoned him. He was had hep C so bad. He'd come out of prison, and really he was terminal. And he had one sister that would come around and visit him. Otherwise, no one would have nothing to do with him. But he was the greatest guy there was. He was just wonderful. He was like a living Jesus. He just loved on people, cared about people. And here he was sick. He was basically dying, but he just loved on everybody. And it had such an impact on our whole community there. And we had the nursing services in there once a week. Then it went to 2 days a week, then 5 days a week. And eventually he was going to have to go into foster care or hospice. So we got a hold of his parole officer and said, look, he's way beyond our level of care. We got to get him into hospice or the hospital. And the probation officer said, I'm sorry, we can't put him in a hospital. He'll have to go back to prison, because he only probably had 6-8 weeks to live. And he'll have to die in prison.
Tragic.
We were up there and praying every day for his healing and everything else. And so his name was Richard, and he said, I talked to my doctors, and they told me if I go off all my medications, I'll just slip into a coma and die. And he asked me, he said, well, is God going to judge me that I'm is that a form of committing suicide? I said, no, Richard, I don't make that kind of decision. I don't make that kind of decision. And yeah, I know your heart. If anybody is going to make it in heaven, it's going to be you. And that's exactly what he did. One of the remarkable things, his family had never showed up the 6-8 months that he was with us. So we had to celebrate of life. The whole family showed up. We had like 60 people show up. And we were crying and telling him how much he meant to us. And it turned their whole thinking about Richard, you know. And so that's one. That's just one. Just really a traumatic, you know, a simple man that didn't have nothing to give, nothing to, you know, but just his humanity, his love, his caring, and living out his life, and then making that decision at the end of his life. It's just so profound, so profound. You want to hear more?
I think
I
that's
don't know if we got
fantastic.
time or not.
Did he or any other resident challenge your perspective on the criminal justice system?
Well, there's horrible tragedies of criminal justice that are still there. They've gotten rid of a lot of the disparities and different things like that, but every once in a while it'll pop up, just crazy stuff. One of my guys was on intensive supervised release, which is the highest level of probation, and he'd been with them for 9 months out in the community. He was still doing some aftercare programming, working part-time, but he'd had another case with a county. So supposedly he was supposed to be on like dual jurisdiction or whatever else. But usually that doesn't happen because ISR is a higher level of supervision and care, you know, overseen. So his ISR agent came to him this was about 6 weeks ago and said, well, Jason, there's a warrant out for you. He goes, what? I haven't done nothing wrong. Well, supposedly you didn't report to this county agent that you're supposed to be on this other probation with, and they're going to come and so we're going to try and squash the warrant. But so watch out. You know, you better stay. You know, he was staying at a halfway house. You better stay there, and you know, don't pop up anywhere because there's an active warrant, body warrant for you. You know, just a crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now he's got to go to court for that and everything else. And, you know, his attorney's saying this is crazy, this is nuts. And so there's still stuff like that happens. And life happens, and life isn't just. And, you know, you can be bitter, better, whatever. Some of that you just have to go through. You know, we've had some great criminal justice reform in our country. We've eliminated, you know, the 3 strike laws are pretty much eliminated across the United States. The lower drug charges, you know, the marijuana stuff, all of those things have been squashed for the most part. I mean, we're making a huge progress compared to where we were 15, 20 years ago. And it's happening. But is there still stuff? Absolutely. Because people are people and systems aren't perfect, and there's always going to be screw-ups and whatever. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we'll wrap it up here with the final 3 questions. Sure. The first 2 are related. The last one is sort of separate. What is something that you took for granted when you were younger that you realize now is more important?
I would say that if I could say to something to myself at that young age, I'd say it's going to work out somehow. Because you have that anxiety and that fear, you don't know how it's going to work out. And that holds you back. That holds you back from decisions, choices, and everything else. So I think it would be...
trusting more?
I would say you're going to be all right, no matter how it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I'll ask the inverse. What is something that you put too much importance into when you were younger that you realize now is less important?
I would say... repeat that again.
What is something that you put too much importance into when you were younger that you realize now is less important?
Impressing people, trying to outperform other people, or try to meet somebody's standard. That was the horrible thing. That's a disease in America that it just keeps you sick and keeps you bound up in chains, in my opinion.
What is one piece of advice for the future generation?
Be kind. Care for people. Do what you can with what you got. And we all do better when we all do better. That was my friend Paul Wellstone said. Be kind. There are people in your lives, in your family, at your workplace that you need to cut the attitude or the judgment and treat people kindly with respect and dignity. It'll change you and it'll change them. Thank you.
That was beautifully articulated. Pastor Michael, you're 1 in a million. Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you, sir.
All right. That's a wrap. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Amen.
That was great.
Amen.
All righty.
Good. Well, you guys put a lot of time and effort into this. God bless you.